Well, good morning to everyone. So I will try to share the presentation. Well, I will try to go fast because I know that I have very short time for the presentation. So, well, first of all, I would like to start the presentation by asking the question, no, that why do we need the adaptation and resilience in our territories, no, especially in rural areas? And well, I think the answer is evident nowadays. No, climate hazards are more frequent and they are more intense also. And nowadays, the international political situation is not the most positive to reduce the CO2 emissions, no, at the necessary scale. So future mitigation scenarios don't play us in a very good pathway nowadays, no? So this is why resilience is an urgent necessity and adaptation is fundamental to cope with the impacts. This is very important, no? Of course, we have to work with mitigation because adaptation and mitigation are not separated battles. They are two faces of the same coin. But I want to be clear that adaptation means preparedness, preparation, and protection. So this is why we are talking about adaptation. On the other hand, I would like to highlight that adaptation is not a final state. Okay, adaptation, it is a continuous process that must be constantly readapted to the climate changes. So we shouldn't say that we are adapted always, no, that we are in this situation of adaptation, but we should say that we have the capacity of adaptation. We have that we are prepared, that we are resilient in front of the climate hazards, and we will see later a bit more about this. But also in this picture, in this image, we can see how the future generations will live in a hostile context if the current policies are not taking the correct measures, no? So the world will be different, will be worse probably from the current one, and we have to assume our responsibility to build and create the adaptive capacity just now, no, in this moment. And well, this is why we need to understand and to integrate the adaptation approach in our policies and our strategies. And for me, it's very important when we talk about adaptation, we need to focus on the concept of risk, of climate risk. No, climate risk represents the potential for adverse consequences in a specific population, in a specific area, in a specific territory. So this risk, as we can see in the picture, this risk not only is conditioned by the climate hazard, by the physical climate event, no? This is also conditioned by the level of exposure to the danger and the vulnerability presented by our system, by our community. So if we need to know the risk in our area, we need to evaluate, we need to assess the hazard, the exposure, and the vulnerability, the three aspects. And there is also another fundamental factor to consider, that is the capacity, no, the adaptive capacity, the capacity of adaptation. And this is our ability, our capacity to act, to create the correct measures to reduce the exposure and the vulnerability. So this is very important because the risk of disaster is absolutely a direct product. This is connected with our decisions, with our policies, with our territorial development, no? And this is going to reflect the importance of the human intervention in all this process. So, well, we are talking also about the rural areas, no? Today, this is our project, this is SURF project, we are talking about the rural areas. And in this sense, I would like to highlight as well that the adaptation planning in rural areas cannot be the same that the urban strategies, cannot be a mirror. This is a different reality. The rural areas has their own characteristics, so they are going to have different kind of hazards, probably. They are going to have different vulnerabilities and different kind of exposure. Just to give you some examples, no? For instance, rural areas, I think they have very connected with ecosystems. So rural life is directly connected with the health of the ecosystem. So this could be a very important cluster or area. The water scarcity and the water quality as well could be a very important key aspect in rural areas, no? Not only for agriculture, but also for also for human consumption as well. Another aspect, very important aspect, is the critical infrastructures. As you know, the rural areas depend on the infrastructures for communications, for transport, for energy. So if in some climate event, some road, some bridge can be affected, this is going to create a kind of isolated community in the rural areas, no? So this could be this shown the fragility of the rural communities in this sense as well. Or for instance, we can talk about the cultural heritage. It's very important as well. I think this is the identity of the rural areas a lot of times, no? And these historical or natural landscapes are very sensitive as well for climate impacts, no? And they can be a very important aspect. Of course, there are a lot of examples, there are a lot of cases, but the most important is that the reality of the rural areas is quite different to the urban areas. So we have the same process to evaluate the climate risk, but we need to think differently, no? We need to adapt different strategies. And I would like to give you some tips about the key enabling conditions for the resilience and the adaptative capacity. This is from the European Mission of Adaptation, but I think they can be very useful as well for the rural areas. For sure, we need the knowledge. We need all the information and the knowledge from the scientific approach. On the other hand, we need resources. We need human resources and financial resources as well to create the infrastructures, to create the measures for adaptation. But I would like to highlight the importance of the governance, the political governance, and especially the citizen engagement, because this is one of the key aspects in our project in SURF. And citizen engagement is so important, especially in rural areas where the population is not so big, like in big cities or other kind of towns, no? So finally, just to finish, because I hope that I am still on time, I would like to give some tips about how to implement. This is very, very quickly, but some ideas how to implement an adaptative strategy from the point of view of the Regional Adaptation Support Tool, the RAST. RAST is a tool from the European community. This is like a standard methodology to implement an adaptation plan, no? In different regions or cities or areas, no? And there are very clear six steps that we should follow during this process of adaptation. And I would like to give you some ideas from the point of view of citizen engagement. I know that later you are going to talk more about this, but I think I would like to highlight this part, no? So the step one is just preparing the ground. Preparing the ground, we need to ensure the political support for sure, but also we need to involve the citizen engagement, to involve them in this need of adaptation. No, they have to understand why we need the adaptation and why we need the support of the citizen engagement. So this is just to prepare the ground. Second, we need to assess the risk. Okay, this is fundamental. I think this is probably one of the most important points. And of course, this should be done by scientists or from a technical point of view with real knowledge and good scientific models. But of course, we need also the expertise, we need the knowledge of the people of the territory, because they are going to give us a real example of the situation, of the risk, and what is happening on the territory. No? And this is why we need here the citizens in the process. No? This is going to be very important as well. Later, we are going to identify the options, the measures for adaptation. And here again, we need to involve the people, we need to involve the citizens and stakeholders just to ensure that the solutions or the options are socially acceptable. I mean, we need to involve them, and this is going to give us the legitimacy to create these solutions. And of course, later we need to select these options and to implement the options. So in this process, the step 3, 4, and 4, we need this involvement of the citizen engagement, especially as well in step 5. When we are going to implement the solutions, we need the active participation of citizens as well. They are really involved creating or implementing the solutions. And finally, with the step 6, of course, we need to do the monitoring and the evaluation of all the process and all the implementation. And this is for sure very important for citizens as well. No? So we need this collective action to collective participation during all the process. And well, I am very fast with the presentation because I would like to go very deep on all the different parts of my presentation. I think there is a lot of information, no? And in some kind, this is a kind of summary of what we have been doing in the SURF project as well, that we have been doing some pilot experience in some village. But I know I have a very limited time, and I hope that I have done my presentation with my 5 minutes. So thank you very much. And if you have any doubt later or now, I don't know if we have time for that, but thank you.
So we continue with Mr. Alessandro Pernice, the talk about the circular economy for rural communities.
Thank you very much. After this inspiring presentations of our lead applicant, COSE, it's difficult. But in any case, my presentation will be very much linked to the COSE presentation. I would like to catch your attention, especially the students, because there will be later, there will be a roundtable and discussion and in this interactive session. So maybe some words, keywords can be very useful in order to, as a starting point for your discussions among the members of each table. So try to take some advantages of this information that will be delivered today. So my presentation is more related about circular economy. You know, we are let's say dominated, I would say, by several definitions of circular economy, the European Parliament, the European Commission, Ellen MacArthur Foundation, just to give some of them most important and relevant actor. What is about this circular economy approach applied to rural areas? Is about a new model of productions, of course, as the Parliament say, and consumptions as well at the same time, that involve sharing, lending, reusing, repairing, refurbishing, recycling existing products, and also materials in order to maximize their lifespan and value. Of course, the general goal is to minimize waste generation. Then the Helen McCarthy Foundation comes with another definition where they say this is an economic model to self-regenerate, but a system in which waste and pollutions are eliminated already at the designing phase, meaning when the products are designed. And let's say materials, products are, of course, kept in use for as long as possible in order to, of course, eliminate as much as possible waste. Let's say this product life cycle is a standard, as I said. This will help to minimize waste. And in this way, we can, let's say, ensure, let's say, the reuse within the production cycle and generate additional value. This transition today, as was announced also by COSE, is extremely important today, especially for the green recovery and the climate change adaptation and mitigation strategies, of course, and also in order to protect our biodiversity, both not only nature, but also marine biodiversity and the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals. There are many, I would say, opportunities for the rural communities, all those who are living in rural area, a remote area, less known area, by adopting the circular economy approach. First of all, to give you some just a brief information, of course, this will generate, there are a lot of studies about that, a lot of employment opportunities for farms, for innovation broker, specialists in sustainable rural agriculture. So I think that this is the time to take some profit, some benefit, and adopting sustainable, let's say, production. Then, in the context, of course, of this circular agricultural economy, what we are doing, we are, let's say, offering another alternative to the existing linear model that, you know, take, make and waste, and replace such a model, which is a disaster, as announced by COSE, by adopting this new, let's say, circular model, where external inputs will be minimized, especially in the field of agricultural production. We will close nutrient loops and we will reduce the negative impacts on our environment, especially by eliminating discharge and waste in general. Think about wastewater. So there are many opportunities for all those who are approaching these sectors. To give you some, just a few examples, water reuse, as water from agriculture, but also from cities. We have also experts in urban planning, Professor Ronsivalle, can be safely recycled, of course, and they can provide a nutrient for crops and pastures. So let's say there are also some benefits when you adopt the so-called precision agriculture, as there are some useful geolocalized tool, GPS, remote sensing technologies, which of course will optimize the use of and the applications of fertilizer and pesticide, and of course with the final aim of benefiting the environment. So also from agro waste, there are millions of projects already available which convert agro waste into renewable biofertilizer or animal feed, new bioproduct for agriculture. So all those who are interested, for instance, I suggest you to look at Orientate, Greenfish. There are many projects, Citrivet, which was another project, let's say, co-implemented with the low carbon economy. They were lead applicant as well. And finally, the bioenergy production, which is also very important. Challenges, of course, all kind of new scenario affects also let's say includes many challenges that we need to face. For instance, economic and structural barriers, as of course for some small entrepreneurial rural farmers, it's difficult to adopt circular economic practices in the agricultural field when they think about cost and technologies that need to be introduced. Lack of skills. José in the presentation clearly, let's say, highlighted this relevance of a participatory approach, as well as the participants of citizens and specialist individuals in adopting this process, this model. But again, lack of skills let's say in this using the technological innovation can be a big problem. And then social inequalities, the resistance of the society in general, of the rural community, as well as the, let's say, cost linked to raw material and energy. Rising cost can hinder, of course, the adoption of new practices and make the transition to circularity for sure very difficult. How SURF, in my vision, can contribute? You can consider SURF is a platform. As I say, is a community of practices that exist, is available, as there are many intellectual output already published for free. And you can take some inspiration from these didactic materials existing, and the project in general help farmers and identifying inefficiency, local risk. We talk a lot about risk, of course, enabling practices that conserve natural resources, and minimizing also yet loss, promoting circularity. We also, through the project, support the so-called rural climate adaptation by preserving soil health, biodiversity, water regulation. The project also, through the materials, can be exploited whenever you organize some training. So you can get inspiration from the material and link the materials to capacity building actions, community engagement, collective actions, and so on. Finally, I think that SURF is a platform where we can promote an exchange among rural areas through workshops that they have already been organized, but also thinking about the future can be replicated. We have an handbook on the table, which is about climate change adaptation strategies. So, and finally, there are some pilots, some best practices and experimental initiatives on the ground where some solutions were already tested. There are a million of pilot projects available. The Good Practices Guide will show you some of this, but there are existing project, European project. And finally, we can link our project to the main European Union framework, which is the Green Deal, of course, the policies promoting circular economy principles, emission reduction, resource efficiency. Thank you very much. I don't want to be too long. We can discuss later. If there are questions, of course, I remain available. And I thank you really much for your attention.
Okay, so we continue with Pau Caparrós, Jane first, about civic engagement and social participation.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks to SURF team. Thanks to Artes for this miraculous rounding in the Palermo port. ancient port of Palermo with nice buildings. It is very, very nice place to stay here today. Now, I will go very briefly, okay, to explain the civic engagement and social participation process that is our contribution from the University of Jaume I in Castelló, that we will be working about the strategies focuses in social participation tools to climate action in rural or local communities. Okay, so let me show you some statistics from the Eurostat Eurobarometer for 2025 that shows that it's very clear that most of the citizens in the European Union now consider the climate change a serious problem. 8 to 10 citizens of the European Union consider that this seems to be very clear. Everyone consider it is a very serious problem. We consider, especially in the region of Valencia, because of the disasters of floods on 1 year from now. But maybe this is not the most important data that the Eurobarometer show us, that this is for us more important data, because although this important percentage of people that are understanding that the serious problem of climate change, only 49%, only the 50% of the population find it difficult to differentiate between reliable information and disinformation. I mean, what is real or not real about the climate change and social media. And especially more important for us is that the Eurobarometer shows that the 52% of European citizens do not think the traditional media from their own countries provide clear information about causes and impacts of climate change. So, for one hand, we have that it's clear that everyone is agree about the importance of the climate change, but in the other hand, we have a serious problem to find the people to can explain the causes of the climate change. So we still having clearly some doubts about where the causes are beginning from, if there is really a climate change in some time. So this is a scenario very dangerous to become manipulate from political ideologies or some special interest, economic interest about these policies of the European Union, of the administrations of the European countries to do about the climate change. So we think we can manage about these things to explain maybe how climate actions understanding about how is the fighting, no? How for an action against the climate change. So how the climate action can be an opportunity in local communities as a strategy focuses in social participation tools. So we are trying to focus on the climate action in local communities, how to involve the communities in local and rural communities to fight, to act against the climate change, maybe to be more clear about the causes of the climate change, to go up to the percentage of the people who don't know about if it's real or not real. We think the communities in rural or local places could be an opportunity. So, for one hand, we focus the climate action in local communities about the governments of the climate actions. We think could be an opportunity. And in the second part, we are related of the data of the Eurostat. We are seeing that the growing of distrust of the climate change. No? Part of the population adopts seriously of the climate change or questions scientific evidence, like the Eurostat barometer show us. Statistics growing not only around the problem, this could emerge a general social disconnection about the problems, about the things of a global and complex issue. Some of the people, or some of the citizens, especially in local communities, sometimes think about climate change is very, very complex, very huge problem, because sometimes, as you were explaining, local farmers can manage the cost, the expensive of the action climate action. So we think it's an opportunity, as we insist, we are trying to explain in this brief presentation. It's an opportunity to act in rural and local communities about the governance of the climate actions. Well, very briefly, active in climate action in local communities is an opportunity to involve the people in both strategies, diagnosis, and decision making. We can improve spaces of governance, spaces of where the citizens can involve in identifying local climate change impacts with the citizen science processes, for example, collect data from their environment, local environments, co-design and evaluating policies and solutions, and to work to not insist in these things, but to work in local rural communities to convince people, to get involved people in actions about the climate change. Well, finally, some general considerings about the transformative power of rural territories. Some of you, of the majority of you, maybe agree with us that the rural local communities have very opportunities to work in the way of connection with the ecosystems. The accumulated knowledge of the problems of the climate change and how to afford these problems in the local experience, in some local experiences. It is very important to involve people from local and rural communities to specifically fight against the disconnection with something we call the urban-centric environment policies in rural territories. Sometimes the policies managing the governance from the urban areas focused in local areas are not thinking very in local areas. They are thinking in urban, thinking in local, but not making from the local. Okay, you understand? So it's very, very important to involve agents from the local and rural communities in this climate action change, also, or even in the urban policies to the climate change. We have to do collective urban and local maybe policies against the climate change. Okay, so this is a resume. Thank you very much. Any questions?
Okay, so we finish with Irma Potočnik Slavič. And a presentation about the rural practices, the localities, responses to climate change, from identification towards adaptation.
So, dear colleagues, dear friends, within SURF for the last 2 years, we've been observing more than 60 localities, rural localities around Europe. And what we have found out. So rural population, stakeholders, actors, students, they practice some kind of climate change reaction. And this climate change reaction is usually related to engagement. They increase preparedness. They self-organize themselves a little bit in collective affairs. And in a way, they are fostering community spirit. But just a few communities on this map and rural localities were able to plant a seed of so-called transformative resilience. So it's not resilience, it's not just something to be resistant to or to bounce back. Resilience means really that they are able to bounce forward. And what kind of transformative resilience is visible? It means that they dig deeper, that they more understand the responses. They are moving beyond the recovery. They are moving beyond the robustness, and they really complete new policy formation, etc. So this means that within these 2 years, we were looking for the communities that are on different development phase of climate change identification, mitigation, and resilience. But what we found out among these 60 examples is that there are perhaps some common so-called principles where rural localities and rural communities become more and more adapted, and that this adaptation process is actually locally led. It was previously described a little bit with our colleagues from Spain, but I enhance this according also to the literature, so-called 8 principles. What is really needed? Local approach, because climate change has to do a lot with local structures, local territories. And indicated in red are examples in our online browser, which perhaps consists this principle at most. So it means that when you will look the material, according to these 8 principles, please browse this example, for example, from Aran Islands or Palermo, etc., where you could really see how local people have addressed this. But it's not just important that the decision-making is on a lower ground, so from bottom up. It is very important to start to build also institutionalization. And we have examples from Spain, which completely underline this. So it's not just a time to wait that the solution will come from top down. You have to reorganize the local community according to needs and according to the financial needs, according to their expectations. The third is the role of education institutions. So it's time to move from this connection, misunderstanding, towards better data, better understanding. And this is the role of science and research to provide really, really good arguments for this. We have here some examples from Italy, Slovenia as well. But also our teaching and learning, it has to be different. It's also good for us, the teachers, it's not just showing some figures, but really bringing our students to the fields, that they really see, that they feel, that they understand, that they touch, that they smell. So this really means that we need to change our practices in actually meeting young people who are aware of that, but that they would really need to see and understand what's going on. And now we come to even more difficult principles. How can we work together? Because Natalia, perhaps your interests might be different than mine, and yours, Matea, and yours, Pau. So we need to put ourselves into some kind of collaboration. What is good, not just for me, Irma, but what is good for us as a community? And then we need to define, because the financial means are going to be more and more scarce, in which priority we are going to invest. And here you have several examples where the community really decided where and how to invest it. Secondly, next thing is, it's not just important that you define the financial means without your community, also broader resources are needed. And you will find several examples from several levels. How did they bring the money in? But here, let's be frank, it usually comes with the projects. Although this is inspiring, it might have innovation impact, but just being dependent on projectification and project money is usually not enough to combat climate change. It has to be systemic financing. And here, especially in Ireland, you might find really good examples. The next thing that's especially problematic, since we are covering Mediterranean countries, but not just in Mediterranean, but it's also around Europe, how to actually justify the transparency and accountability what we are doing. Is this money that's coming for climate change not just gonna be collected in the hands of some people who have power, who are in the proper class, who have information? Is this money and this information and innovation and power also equitably distributed around rural areas? This is a big issue. So I hope that you got the logic now, that perhaps some elements at the beginning, some principles might be a little bit easier to succeed, but now we are coming to the more complex elements. And very complex elements is also the population fabric of rural. It is becoming more and more complex. And with climate issues, we need to address all the inequalities, not just among the people who are domestic there, but also all the migrants, male and female, people with different kinds of disabilities. So it's really demanding task. And within these 60 examples, we were able to identify elements of these 8 adaptation principles, actually in several of them. It has to be clear that these are not just the clear-cut types. So every single example is a mixture of these principles, but we wanted to bring the core message to you. So, but then we come to the question whether the information we gathered over the last 2 years, is it really relevant? Because let's be frank, also in our communities, we have examples of maladaptation to climate change. We invested a lot of money into climate change, not in a proper way. Perhaps we don't have enough skills, knowledge, information, technologies, etc. And then it's also another question, whether we can actually use the examples from Spain, from Ireland, Slovenia, Italy, in other rural communities. We think that Surf with this browser has the potential for scaling up. But where is this potential? Every single community has to put the mirror in front of it and then grasp the knowledge that's there and to transform the knowledge to the local necessities. And here, sharing the knowledge, gathered knowledge, I think it has a big potential. That's why we have seen that these 60 communities are on a very different development stages related to climate resilience. But there is a hope for everyone, to upscale if we want to. And this is, I think, the message from the SURF. And this is also the message for our rural network. In the next 2 days, we are going to be together and we can really network because we have similar risks and hazards. Of course, we have different circumstances, but we can network and we can share. This is the message that we got from these 60 examples. Thank you very much.